I'm Wolfman Sam here with my partner Johnny Buck Guns, and we are
Hello,
Creatures of the
everyone.
Night. John, you want to start us off?
Yeah, why not? Let's see. In today's podcast, I'm going to be discussing about, wait, let me just get my notes up. What's been going on with Hollywood with the AI Writers Guild strike. It's crazy how, like, with the whole, like, artificial intelligence, how, like, it's scary to think about, like, someday that people's, like, jobs can be replaced by a robot.
Yeah, I guess so, but I don't know. AI, in terms of what it is now, I don't think it's going to be any threat in that retrospect, but
Right,
maybe. I don't know. If they're going to use it in Hollywood, we're probably going to be in for some pretty cringy AI Hollywood
right.
films.
Yeah, I know.
I've
Well,
I've
then again,
personally used AI for artwork and all that stuff,
right.
and it's not there yet. It's not even close.
No,
And
no.
keep in mind, it's what somebody programs, So like
True, true.
artificial thinking, that whole Terminator mindset, I
Yeah,
don't
well,
think is going to
that
be
leads
in
to.
reality. So
Right.
you have
That's
anything to
at
worry about.
least another topic that's going to be talked about a little bit later about with this AI thing about how James Cameron said that when he did Terminate, like he was recently saying how like I made Terminator back in the 80s and nobody listened. And it's like it's one of those like films that's so somewhat accurate, not even not 100%, but somewhat accurate to a degree of how like what he predicted the future of like artificial intelligence.
Right, right. And whatever, I don't remember the episode that he kind of ripped off
Yeah,
from
yes.
Outer
Oh,
Limits
I have it.
episode.
It's Harlan Ellison's Outer Limits episode, The Soldier, and it's
Right.
funny during the Chris actually not Chris well after Christmas New Year's Eve. I didn't do that much that New Year's Eve. I stayed at home and I watched a few Outer Limits episodes with my dad, and he showed me the episode The Soldier, the Outer Limits, explaining to me that this is where James Cameron was inspired for Terminator, but of course
Right.
there are some differences between The Soldier and Terminator. And the episode The Soldier, it was just about a soldier who was like born in a time where he was like used to like fighting in war. He was like there's like no explanation why he was sent back into a different time than what he was used to. I not understand that life was not always violence. It was he didn't have like love, like no one like nurtured him and stuff like that.
Right, right. You
Yeah,
know,
it was
I
that was a good episode.
yeah, I guess the same could be said for Jordan Peele and Twilight Zone. There was one particular Twilight Zone episode that he ripped off for was the movie Get Out. Um,
Which I yeah, I'm not
the
sure if I saw that
episode
episode
where
twice.
the old couple wants new bodies.
Okay, I'll
Uh,
have to check.
that
What's the name
particular
of that
Twilight Zone
episode?
episode. Of course, we're talking about the original Twilight Zone episode
Right,
series
of
film.
course. I know what you're talking, but what's the name of the episode?
I don't remember, but it was. I remember the premise. The premise was about two an old couple, right, who
Right.
were aging, and they were offered brand new bodies, younger bodies.
Okay. Okay, I see. Interesting. I have to check that. I don't know if I don't think I never saw that episode.
Yeah, and I didn't know when I saw Get Out because I liked Get Out when I first saw it. I didn't
It was a
know that it was pretty blatantly ripped off from a Twilight Zone episode. I didn't know that.
right. Well,
That,
it was.
that I kind of soured on Jordan Peele
I
after.
mean, I didn't hate Get Out. It was okay, but I
No,
wasn't
I
like,
didn't
oh,
hate it.
like
I didn't hate it.
right, same. It was like, I wasn't like giving it much like the hype that it deserved. I mean, it was an interesting premise. I can see what Jordan Peele was trying to do, but I couldn't see like what was so different about it that I'm not seeing in this movie that has not been done before. Is what
Right.
I
Or
was.
done better.
Yeah, exactly. Like Night of the Living Dead, or maybe trying to think of other films of a theme.
Here's one for you,
Or
and one
Candyman maybe or something like
yeah,
that. And he did the
here's one for you. I actually
what's
saw
that?
recently, and I'm
What's
so glad
that?
I did. Dead Silence.
I've heard of that, but I didn't see it.
You should check it out, and that goes for everyone watching on this podcast here. But if you haven't seen, I believe it's 2007 Dead
Yeah, wasn't it done
Silence.
by if I'm not mistaken, James Wong, I think, or
Really good supernatural type of horror film. It's one of those horror films you think it's going to be like one type of horror film because it
Right.
has to do with a dummy, a
Right.
ventriloquist dummy, and you're thinking, oh, they're going to go the child's play route, right?
Right. Well, actually, it's
And
funny you say that.
it's like that at the beginning of the movie, and then it takes a supernatural twist.
Well, it's funny you say that. The movie Megan that came out this year, that felt like a really Chucky knockoff with like
I didn't see it. It
I
looked
did. It was
I
again,
wasn't
I didn't
interested in it.
right, I can respect that. I mean, again, I didn't I mean, if you like the movie, that's fine. But for me, I didn't hate it. It was like, it's
Yeah,
like
middle of the road.
yeah,
On going on about the horror films I've seen, I saw probably the weirdest horror film you will ever see. I consider it kind of the link between David Cronenberg and David Lynch.
right.
It's a Japanese horror film from the late 80s. It's in black and white. It's called Tetsuo the Iron Man. You ever see it? Ever hear of it?
I've heard of it. It sounds familiar, but I don't know what it's
It's on
about.
Shudder,
Okay.
and it's the one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen.
That's Japanese horror for you.
I haven't seen a film like that since Eraserhead.
Right.
You know, it's like I said, it's like if David Cronenberg, super gory scanners, David Cronenberg, and David Lynch did a film together.
That would
So
sound like an
could you
interesting combination.
just imagine the bizarreness of it?
Right.
And it actually has a pretty good story.
Right.
You think it's like one type, you think it's like a body horror type story, which it is, but there's
Right.
also some mystery in it as well. There's like a murder mystery woven in
Right.
as well.
Right.
And the effects are really good. No, it reminds me a lot of The Thing,
Right.
The John Carpenter's version, of course,
Okay.
in terms of body
Well,
horror.
I like the original one too, but that's like different
Yeah,
levels. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good remake. But
Yeah.
yeah, this
Absolutely.
particular film, um, you might not get the story, but you might appreciate it in terms of effects because they use everything from like sped up footage to reverse footage to stop motion.
Right. Oh, I love
All
stop
these
motion effects.
techniques, practical techniques, mind you,
Right, which I love.
um, to make a bloody, gory, weird, and when I emphasize weird, I really mean weird.
Right.
It's definitely a what the fuck did I just watch kind of movie.
Right. Well, well, that's kind of like with David Lynch and well, like as you said, like the way you describe the film. That's David Lynch and Cronenberg to begin with. When you watch their films, you're like, "What the heck did I just like watch?" You're
Yeah,
in
that's
shock.
this
You
movie
don't
in a
know what
nutshell. I
to.
mean, if anybody wants to see it, again, it's Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Right.
It's on Shudder for those of you that have Shudder or can get it somewhere else. But
Right.
give it a
Right.
watch if you want really something different and something that's going to stick with you. Because this film certainly did. Because by the end of it, I was like, okay, this film is just awesome. Okay, this
Right.
it's
But
completely
did you
batshit and
did you feel like you
crazy.
needed a mental break after watching it or something like that?
Um, yeah,
Okay.
but it gets to like the point of like, okay, you like you're already in the asylum, so to speak.
Right.
So you're kind of just going with it towards the end. You're just like, all right, I'm going with this now.
Right.
Because like the first couple minutes, you're like, okay, that's really weird. Oh, that's really nasty. Oh my
Right.
god. Oh my god. And by the end of it, you're just like, okay, let's go.
Right.
Um,
Because because I remember when I first saw Eraserhead, I was like, "What the heck was
yeah,
this?" Again, it was
yeah,
another I didn't know what to make of it for the first time. Like,
yeah. And for a film, Racerhead for film from the late '70s, man.
yeah,
I mean, it's in its own world.
it is. It's like
It really is. Like if you told me that Eraserhead was filmed in the '70s, I'd be like, you could have told me it was filmed today.
I guess
And
I could see that. Or heck, if
yeah,
it
because
would feel a little bit like
so
German expression
timeless
to
and
some degree.
bizarre, you know.
It would feel like German expressionism to some degree, but done in like
Yep.
talkie
And
style.
that's going back to Tetsuo. It's that's kind of it has this same exact vibe. And I
Right.
remember the very first time I started to watch it, which, this was like the second time I actually sat down and watched it because the first time I tried to watch it, I couldn't follow it
Right.
because the pace was all over the place. And
Right.
then now last week I sat down and watched it over the weekend, on a Friday, and I
Right.
was just like, you know what? That was actually pretty awesome. It was
Right.
weird, but it was pretty awesome.
I get it. Totally understand that one. And like with talking about this, my friend, I have to see the Infinity Pool that came out. That's David Cronenberg's son Brandon that recently did that, and
Right, right.
I was
I'll
telling my
check that out
friends
as well.
that if Brandon is as good as his dad, like who knows, he could be our like generation's David Cronenberg's son, like father like son in a way.
Yeah, have you seen what's her name? Argento.
Oh, Asia Argento.
Yeah, his daughter.
Yes, I have. I've seen some of her films. I saw Scarlet Fever. That was a film that she directed. That was really, really good. Like it was based on her life in a fictionalized way, especially the scene where she was almost raped by one of the Hollywood producers. That was inspired from her experience from when she was almost raped by Harvey Weinstein.
I'll check it out.
It was really good. It was like just an amazing film. How like it just shows that she really is a talented person, Age Argento, and she's got directing skills just like her father.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a second generation of actors and directors coming
Right.
out
To a degree.
to a degree. I like Brad Dourif's daughter. I forget her name.
Right. I haven't
She's
seen
in
her.
the recent Chucky movie. She's good.
I'm
I
sure she
like
is.
her.
I'd
She's
like to check
good.
her
She's
out at
very
some point.
good. You know.
Right.
But I hope she does more movies in the future. Maybe
Right.
less Chucky related stuff. That would be nice.
Right. Like something different than just
You
doing
know.
Chucky. Trying not to be typecast like her dad.
Yeah, and you have to wonder. And as much as I love the character of Chucky, how long
Right.
are they going to do it? How long?
Right. Yeah. No,
I personally think, I'm not wishing this anytime soon, but when Brad Dourif does, kick the bucket, so to speak, I personally think they're just going to AI his voice, and it's just not going to sound.
it's not gonna be the same, especially how like that's the problem with the whole AI thing. It just won't be the same if you like AI'd
No.
somebody or even like with the same with like CGI and a young face or a
Yeah,
deceased actor like they did with
you
Star
will always
Wars.
be able to tell. It's like CGI, right? It's
Yeah.
like CGI. Like CGI in the beginning, was bad in
Right.
comparison to today. And today it's still good, but people can still tell it's CGI.
I feel like it depends on like the type of film it is, where it's like, okay, maybe it's necessary to use it for that situation. Like when you look at the second Terminator film, that it's an example where when he goes through the gate, it's like, okay, you have to
Yeah,
CGI it. There's no way
yeah,
you can do it in real
yeah,
life.
and
That's
that used stop motion. That used mix effects. It didn't necessarily rely solely on
no,
CGI or
no.
heavily on
Even the same with
CGI.
Jurassic Park. It relied on a combination, even though they wanted to do the
Right, right.
traditional Ray Harryhausen stop motion effect. But when Spielberg saw the computers of CGI, he's like, I'm gonna use it for some scene, but I'll still use some practical effects,
Well, it's like we said before. It's like CGI has its place,
but
sure,
don't overdo it.
but don't rely on it. Don't use it as a crutch because it's like, people know that it's CGI.
Yeah,
And how
absolutely.
cool would it be if we have more and more? And this is what I say, like indie films, I think are really going to make a come up. They're going to come up.
Yeah,
We're going to start
yeah.
watching them.
And
But
with all this talk on CGI, I recently saw the Flash film that came out recently. That
how
it was good, but again, it's like it wasn't great or perfect. It was like I liked parts of it, and parts it was like,
yeah, a lot of people say they like parts of it.
yeah, like it was cool to see Michael Keaton as Batman. That was the real reason why I went to see. I wanted to see Keaton as Batman because
Of course,
Lord knows if this could be his last time. Like I might as well take the advantage. This may not be a Batman film with just him. It's like the hell with it. Let's just see it
Yeah,
for.
let's go in for the fan service, basically.
And the CGI in it was like it's like over the top. And after a while, I was like, I was getting numb for seeing too much CGI after.
Yeah, you want to see something that's there. And going back to this weird film Tetsuo, that's what I like about it the most is you get a nice mix of effects. A lot
Right.
of
Okay.
practical effects, but you also get some stop motion. You get some
Right.
first film, you get sped up film, you get, all these different camera tricks and special effects,
Right.
that could do it.
How do you spell it? This film. It's Tetsu or
Tetsuo. I think it's Testuo, I believe.
Tetsuo the Iron Man, right?
The Iron Man, yeah.
Right. Because
And
I
it's
might
a
want to check this out.
weird film. Like I said, it's like the bridge between Cronenberg and
Right.
Lynch. It's a
Well,
weird.
I actually do like Japanese horrors a lot, especially how like,
Yeah, I do too.
they
I
can
love
really
the
freak you
original
out.
Ring
Like
and the original Grudge.
when I watched the original Ring and the Grudge, I was like, whoa, I think this is scarier than the sorry to
Yeah,
offend people, but I was not a fan of the Ring and the Grudge American remakes. Sorry, guys.
right. And it was down to I think it was down, and again, we don't bash CGI. It has its place, but I really think it was down to just the CGI in the American,
Right.
you know.
Well,
Uh,
also, I like the atmospheres better in the
yes, and the
originals.
pace, it's
Yes.
funny to say, but the pacing in this Japanese horror film was a little bit better because it
Okay.
relied on suspense.
Right.
And that's really why I can't really get behind a lot of films today because a lot of films rely on cheap jump scares, which I mean, jump scares have been around since the 20s.
Right.
They've been around for a
I
long
also
time,
liked
but you got to really build it up. You got to
right.
have your audience seep into that atmosphere and then
Right.
go with the boo and the,
Right. I also liked Audition. That really freaked me out.
oh, audition, yes.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I am not a squeamish person. For those of you who have seen Audition, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, maybe give it a watch. You've been warned. It's a
Well,
really freaky
you might want to easily
Japanese horror film.
slowly ease your way into it rather than just jumping into Audition right away. That's my
Maybe.
advice.
But yeah, Audition. I believe that's also on Shutter as well. We're
Yeah,
not
well,
sponsored by
I own it
Shutter,
on
by the way.
DVD.
We are not sponsored by Shutter. These are
No,
just
we're not. I
I'm just giving
wish.
you places where to find it.
Right.
We are
No,
not sponsored in any way. No.
Audition. It makes me afraid to date, and it also makes.
Yeah. Well, Fatal Attraction,
Yeah,
actually,
that too.
too. Fatal
Good
Attraction,
point.
I think more so. But yeah, Audition is a brutal film, and I am not a squeamish person. I've seen
Right.
enough Italian horror films to be like, what?
Right.
You know? But Audition, that one particular scene, the scene, the torture scene, I was
Yes.
like, oh no, oh
I
God,
was shivering, I
no.
was freaked out, and I was disturbed. It's the first time I mean, not the first time, but it was one of the few times where it's rare for me with horror films to freak me out, but that was probably a rare
And
occasion for
the
me to,
worst part of that scene, it's not like a quick,
it's slow.
slice. It's slow, it's
Yes.
methodical. You see every little thing that
Yes.
she does to this dude.
I was amazed with how they showed every detail of it from like until up until the climax of where he's saved and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a brutal, brutal movie.
It
It's a
was
brutal.
like, holy shit, like what the f
And I mean, that's the reason why I'm not really into that torture genre
Well, I think it was done
of
well though for the
horror
torture
films. Yeah,
message.
it was a good film.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
um, but personally, I've never been into like the hostile stuff.
I
It
never
doesn't
saw
appeal to
Hostel.
me. You know,
I've seen three of the Saw films. The first two are good. The third one I don't remember so well.
I still need to see the first Saw.
Right. Oh,
I
it's
know it's been like years, but
20 years since the first came. Well,
you
I was
feel
11,
old yet? 20 years? I remember when that trailer came out. I was a kid.
I was 11 years old when that came out. At that time
Uh,
I was little,
uh,
not much into horror films at that time except for black and white horror films, but if I
uh,
at the
yeah,
time as a kid hearing about the title, I thought it sounded like a gore fest, but it really was not as gore as it sounded.
yeah,
I mean, there's a little gore, but not to the extreme as I thought it was. And
yeah. And then
I saw it in
the later
2014,
films,
10-year
I think, would get
anniversary.
gorier.
but as a kid, like that was like a popular that was our version of the franchise of like Halloween, Freddy and Jason. Every year from that point, there
Yeah,
was
every year. Yeah, they're
almost until I was
still
high
there to
school.
this day. They are
Yes,
still making them.
yes, but I haven't kept up with the
No,
series.
no. I would probably just watch the first one and be done.
Yeah, definitely check out the second. The second one is worth the checkout, but the rest of that after that, it's like, take it or leave
All
it.
right, all right. I'll take your
Two
word.
two is really good actually. I definitely recommend two, but after that, skip it.
Okay,
Yeah,
you got it.
yeah.
Um, all right. Well, before I forget, I have some big news.
What's
Uh,
the big? Oh, right.
for
Actually, I know what he's
for
gonna say.
all
Go
of
on, my
you
friend.
that have been watching the podcast, been keeping up with us, on the Creatures of the Night. I have a book, a horror story out on Amazon for paperback and Kindle. It's called Dead Girl. It's kind of an old school Stephen King esque type, not necessarily murder mystery, but there is mystery in it. And for those of you that want to check it out, I will send a link below. That way you could purchase it. Um, I'd love for you guys to read it or download it on Kindle and just let me know what you think because I've been working on this for years since I was a teenager. And not to guilt trip you guys. I mean, if you guys don't like it, fine.
Buy
But
the book.
buy my book. But yeah, it is called Dead Girl. Uh, give it a check it out. Give it a read,
Right.
or whether it's on your Kindle or you just want it in your hands. And I hope you guys enjoy.
The sales pitch.
Yeah, buy my book. Anyway, what else? What else do we need to cover here?
Well, here's something. Recently I've been like watching some Hammer Dracula movies and George Romero's. I recently watched his last two dead zombie films that he did before he passed away in like the late 2000s, Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead.
Right.
Diary I thought was okay, not great. I can see what he was trying to do, George Romero. He's trying to appeal to the modern audience at the time with the internet and the YouTube generation. And Survival of the Dead, I thought that was a little bit lame compared to Diary.
Right.
Yeah, Survival was just stupid and only made for a paycheck, and it's just sad how that you had a guy who was typecast for being a zombie director, where this guy was more than just a zombie horror director, George Romero.
Yeah, he did do some really
Creep
interesting.
Show and
Yeah, Creep Show. I always go to Creep Show. That
right, but
was
I'll admit I haven't seen his other things. I never saw Monkey Shines. I never saw
Monkey Shines is really good.
right, and I know I know I also read that he was supposed to direct The Stand by Stephen King, but it never came. He just never
Yeah,
got the green light. I know he was supposed to direct Pet Cemetery, but again, he just never got the green light to make the
I
movies.
mean those miniseries and films, they came out very good. I like the original miniseries of The Stand, the one from the '90s,
Right, which I never
and
saw.
I've grown to like Pet Cemetery, the original Pet Cemetery. I
That's
didn't like it on the first viewing, but
right,
it's growing on me. It's
right,
growing on me. And any horror film that uses the Ramones as a soundtrack is a winner in my book.
right, right.
Yeah,
Interesting, cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
a little bit of
because
music.
George Romero really started the like made zombies popular, like the flesh
Yes,
eating zombies.
absolutely.
You wouldn't have like Walking Dead, or you wouldn't have like I don't Shaun of the Dead or Resident Evil. Well, even though I never really kept up with
Resident
the
Evil. You wouldn't have. You probably wouldn't have Silent Hill to a
that's
certain
true, which I never saw,
degree.
but I'm familiar with the movie.
But Silent Hill was inspired by Jacob's Ladder.
Right. Oh,
So
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, and the Silent Hill film is pretty good too.
I have to see. I've never
Yeah,
seen
you
it.
have.
What's
It's
funny you say
different.
that, bringing that up.
It's
My sister said she saw that in the theater, coming from someone who's not a horror fanatic. I guess that was a different phase in her life. But anyway,
Yeah, it's different from the games because they kind of smash a couple characters together from like from like I think the first three games.
right,
So they take the story from the first game and kind of put it with the third game. It's weird.
Interesting.
Um,
I
but
have to check it out at some point.
and it's funny because I always have I always have this kind of conversation. But it's funny because the stories themselves within the games are actually pretty cool. Like I know you're not a big I know you're not a big gamer,
No.
but if you want to just check out the story or just a little walkthrough on the Silent Hill games, just to kind of watch them like movies, they've got
Right.
good stories,
Well, I have done
especially
that.
one and two.
I've done that on
One and
rare
two
occasions with video
especially.
games.
But yeah, I would check them out.
Right.
The I would check out the video games if you can find some walkthroughs and some of the cutscenes and
Right.
just to get a grips on the story because it could have been the other movies, right?
Right. Gotcha.
And
Well,
the
that's
first movie does adapt the first game pretty well. A little
right.
differences here and there, but pretty.
But that seems to be very like common these days with like the with making with YouTube videos for like video games where they'll like take the video game and make their own version of like a movie out of it, whether it's the Batman Arkham games or even just like any particular genre of video games.
Yep. And on that on that thought, looking back, you know what I just rewatched recently?
What's
The
that?
Laura Croft movie
I never saw that, but I'm
with
familiar.
Angelina Jolie. It's pretty faithful for the to the video game,
Right, right,
actually.
right,
I saw it, back in the day when, they
right,
advertised it and I got it on DVD
right,
back in the day. I don't have it anymore. I wish I did,
right.
but
Well, you win some, you lose some.
oh well.
Yes.
But that one was pretty faithful to the game. I
Right. Despite video game movies seem to be not always not
yeah,
always
yeah, but this generation gives me hope. Gives me hope. We had a pretty successful Mario movie and
my
Sonic
my
the
my my, my,
Hedgehog movie.
my and it's funny you said my niece and nephew like love that movie a lot from because they play Mario games
I haven't
sometimes.
seen the movie itself, but
Me
I've heard
neither.
it's done good, and I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it just I think if I was a video gamer, it'd be a different story. But because I'm not
Yeah,
that much of a video gamer, it's like, I can pass out on this one. It's
yeah,
in a way that's his generation's Who Framed Roger Rabbit to a degree.
I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
video games, or then again, Wreck-It Ralph was more of the Roger Rabbit for video gamers.
Yeah, technically, yeah. Technically, yeah.
My recent Roger Rabbit video got like the most views on my channel because of its because of the title catch was, is it a Disney film? Because it seems to be debatable on whether or not Roger Rabbit is a Disney film or not, because how it's not like the traditional type of Disney film where it's
Right, but there
animation
is
from start to
Disney
finish.
characters in
There's no
that.
Disney princesses and
Oh, you got Mickey Mouse, you got a
true,
few other
yeah.
goofies in
As
there.
yes, as a little kid, that blew my mind to see that. Like, wow, there's Mickey Mouse, there's Bugs Bunny, and there's Donald Duck
Absolutely,
and
because it was
Daffy
one
Duck
of
in the
the
same.
first. Absolutely, because it was one of the first really major crossovers. Now
Right.
crossovers are like standard now, right?
Yeah, yeah, true.
Standard to have a crossover now. It's
Yes.
to be expected.
I
But back in the day, if you saw
That was
like
rare.
I don't know, RoboCop and
Right.
Terminator in the same room, or Ash and Freddy Krueger in the same room, you would lose
Right.
your mind because it was like an impossibility,
Right. Or the
right?
Universal
You didn't
Monster, Franken.
think it was going to be a thing. That's why Freddy versus Jason was such a big thing.
Yeah, it was. Or
I
Godzilla.
like that movie. A lot of people
Me too.
sour
No,
on that movie, but
I like Freddy versus Jason. It's not great or perfect. It's got
no,
like
it's not
it,
great, but
it's got cool fight scenes.
it's
I like
it,
the idea, but the
yeah.
characters are so lame in that movie though. That's where it
Yeah,
kind of falls
the
down.
human characters, yeah. But
Yeah.
let's be honest. Let's get down to brass tacks. Did you really watch that movie for the human characters, or did you really
Not
want to
really.
see Freddy and Jason
I wanted to see Freddy and
just
Jason
get
kick ass.
down and just fight? And
Yes.
that's what they advertised it as. They
Yes.
would have like advertisements of like like a UFC thing of like
Yeah, yeah,
Freddie
yeah.
weighs 300 with Michael Buffer or something like that, right?
Yes.
Freddie weighs 300
I
pounds. Michael
when
Myers,
I was when I
Jason Voorhees weighs a ton.
when
Will they
when
get
I
it?
was when
Who's gonna be the winner? That's how they advertised it.
Right. When I was in high school, I remember when I was getting into horror film, when I finally saw Freddy versus Jason as a teenager, I remember seeing like YouTube, like, behind the scenes stuff, or like how when they were promoting the film, like you said, they were doing like a Vegas promotion. Let's get it ready to rumble, where Jason and Robert England and Ken
Right,
Persinger
right.
are.
And that's really what the major selling point was.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's kind of why the victims kind of fell by the wayside. Though it had some really cool kills.
Yeah, it
Had some
did, but
really cool
and
kills.
I
I love
have a book about the making of the film called Slash of the Titans, but I forget who the author is. I knew something, but it's interesting about like how that film was developed, goes back to the and Jason films were
yeah.
popular, how they originally like had this idea for the film, then they went in a different direction, or the script was rejected. It's a mess what that film like went through for its original productions. Like I read how in the 90s they wanted to do Jason on trial. I'm thinking, were they going for like OJ Simpson?
I was thinking like my brain went to like old school 1970s Incredible Hulk.
Right,
With the
right,
trial of the Incredible Hulk, but that's where my brain went. But
right. Or they
that would
wanted
have
to
been
do like
interesting.
they originally wanted to do like a Freddy cult. I'm like, okay, that could have gone either way.
Yeah, that could have gone either way. I would have loved to see an adaptation of Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the comic book.
Yeah, but
Although
because
I think it's a
again,
little too
rights
late. I love
issues.
Bruce. I absolutely
Me
love
too.
Bruce Campbell, but it's a little bit too late. It should have been
Yeah,
done either around this time of Army of Darkness or maybe sometime in the early 2000s. It kind of missed its
yeah.
window. To
But
do it now wouldn't have the same magic.
no, but the thing is though, like for what I've read, Bruce Campbell said he's not really much big on crossovers and doesn't think that Ash should not be like fighting Freddy and Jason or Michael
Well,
Myers
we have
or
a comic. We have a comic that
which
says
we do, which I read the comic and it's
it
it's a
would
good comic
work.
book, but it's not the same as what if I was watching it on screen.
No, I mean that's the closest thing you can get to a film.
Yeah. I liked the second comic. The third one, it's been a long time. I remember
I
like
didn't read the third one. I have the
it,
first one.
it was again, it's been a while. It was okay, but I found it a little bit like over the top with its political message and stuff, especially at the time it was during the but maybe I think that might have been the Bush administration at that time. I think. I don't
Possibly, because I know the first issue came out in like what, '03,
something like that. I'm not really wait, let me just double check that for the sake of it.
'03, '02, around there, maybe '05.
Dash comic book.
I don't know. He's checking, folks.
Yeah, I'm checking. Let me just double okay. All right, this was around 2007. Okay, that was the first one.
2000. Okay.
Okay, here's the second one. Okay, 2009. Okay, that was like during Obama at that time. So, okay, but still,
Oh
it was
wow.
over.
So it had a good gap.
Yeah, but still, it was over the top though. This one, it was Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors. Not a terrible one, just over the top. That's all I can
Sounds
remember.
like a heavy metal album cover.
Right.
The Nightmare
That
Warriors.
yeah, I
Well,
can
we
see
had the Dream Warriors with Dawkins, so
that.
I and that's another thing I have to thank the Nightmare on Elm Street movie series for was
Right.
introducing me to the heavy metal band Dokken,
Right.
which awesome stories. I still will never forget the story of Dokken and Company when they were filming the music video for Dream Warriors, right?
Right.
Apparently their guitarist George Lynch was so high and so coked out of his mind. In the music video, he breaks through a wall, but behind the scenes, he was so like coked out of his mind, he couldn't physically break the wall.
That's like
Right?
similar how like Stephen King has no memory of like writing Cujo. If
Right?
you ask Stephen King to this day what he thought of when he was writing Cujo, the answer is I don't know because he was so high at the time on cocaine. He has no recollection of ever writing the
And
story to
guess
Cujo.
who? And
Yes.
guess who supplied the coke?
Who?
Robert England, in full Freddy makeup, and he was dealing it out on his Freddy gloves.
Whoa.
Dawkins snorted cocaine off of Freddy Krueger's
Man.
gloves. The 1980s, folks. Come on. I mean, that's pretty. I'm anti Coke, but that's pretty
Same.
metal. That's pretty metal.
That is pretty. Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody talks about Dawkins being a hair band. I said they hung out with Freddy Krueger. Give them some slack. I mean, they were heavy.
Right.
But
I never would have guessed or known that story, like you told.
yeah, the '80s was definitely a magical time.
It was, but like anything else, there was always the pros and cons. Like anything else, there was the Reagan administration,
Yeah,
the AIDS epidemic,
yeah,
and when I and it's with talking about this, I recently did a review with my dad about the Fly remake, about
I
how
loved it. Yeah,
me too, how like it's a great remake in its own way, as good as the original, but different with how it was
yeah,
updated with like it's a body horror, and it was also about the themes of like old age and how like it alters his personality besides like how he changed into a
right,
monster.
right. And and we talked about this before. I think we talked about this in the last podcast. Uh, there was something about the '80s where they were remaking, and it's funny because they remake everything nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But it's so funny, and everybody's all '80s crazy, and
Yes.
try and do the '80s aesthetic and do, but the
Yeah,
writing isn't there.
right.
But to make a long story short, there was something in the water when it came to remaking '80s classics.
Right.
Um, The Blob is another example. The
Invasion of the
Thing
Body
was a
Snatchers.
remake of
Like,
'30s Thing from Another World.
actually, yeah, in the 50s
Um,
actually.
'50s.
Yeah, you said
But
30, but still, yeah, I get your point though.
and I think the Body Snatcher remake goes back to the '70s, but
Yes.
the point stands of I believe it started with the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
I don't know what it was that was in the air going from the '70s to the '80s of just remaking classics and making them better, making them gorier and stuff. And I'm not taking
Yeah.
anything away from the original. I love the originals too.
Me too. The same
They're
with like
great too, but they're a completely different animal.
they are, but I think at that time they were able to like because well, a lot of those directors they grew up like watching those films. They wanted
Right,
to do their
right.
own remake as tributes and do something different. Well, that's what made them so great. Like in the Thing remake, it was more true to Joseph Campbell's Who Goes There, whereas in the original, it's your basic typical like 50s sci-fi
Monster
film.
movie for the
Yes, yeah.
original. Yeah, yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
in the book, there is the monster could have been anybody inside of them, is what was so
Right. And what was so terrifying was like they would become this abomination.
yeah.
They would just
When they were
become
infected,
a human being. They'd become like this gory abomination, basically.
when they became a monster, they basically lost their humanity and they lost their trust.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And I love, for those of you who haven't seen The Thing, go see the 1980s John Carpenter's The Thing.
right.
And
Last,
check out The Thing from Another World too. It's great
absolutely. Check
too,
out
but
both
it's
versions.
go into the original, Thing from Another World, and then go into the remake of it's just called The Thing, but go into those two movies with different mindsets to know
Right,
that they might as well be two completely different movies.
right. But and I was also like rewatching the War of the Worlds remakes with Spielberg, which I still don't seem to
Right,
care for as much as
right. Yeah,
just like I mean I can see what Spielberg was going for to like with trying to change it up, but I just didn't feel like he didn't do justice to that much compared with
yeah, and yeah.
the original like blew my mind with its special effects, where in the remake it was all just computerized and
Yeah, well, that's the struggle I always have. And like I said, CGI has its place, but I really think it's overused.
yeah, and also I feel like Spielberg like Tom Cruise's character in the War of the Worlds remake is just so like forgetful for me for some reason. I find him
Right,
like so
right.
bland. And the same with
I think I
the
saw it in theaters too.
I saw it I remember like hearing about it at the time, but I didn't see it in the theater. I remember like watching it with my friends on I think maybe either TV or DVD, one of the above, and I just remember like not liking it as a 12-year-old and rewatching it today. I'm like, this film does still not hold up for me that much.
Right, exactly.
And also, I like the day that sorry, the day the Earth stood still. I only saw the remake once. It was very forgetful to me. The
Yeah.
original still like stands the test of time for its message on world peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A certain, but it all depends on the audience too.
Because I feel like when you look, like I said, looking at The Thing, Invasion of the Blood, those were good remakes. But then when they tried post 80s remaking a classic, it just didn't
Yeah.
it didn't
And
do justice.
and honestly, with this, with this generation, I hate the idea of these requels,
Yeah,
these
yeah.
identity, what they have no identity of their own. They're
No.
like, let's do a sequel to the original, but
Right. Not
also
remake it,
remake
remake
it
it.
and call it the same as the like. I don't mean to be a cynic, and listen, I know there are younger people that probably like it, which teaches,
Yeah.
listen, there are some people that like the new stuff. Me personally, I like the classics, but I always give the new stuff a shot.
It depends. Like there are some new things it really depends on my mood or what really if I really liked it that much. Like
Right, right.
yeah.
But to drive my point home, the one thing I've noticed is just these films, these requels have no identity of their own.
Right.
Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, the
I didn't
umpteenth
see it.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre requel, remake, whatever you want to call it. It tries to be a sequel to the original, while also being called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not two,
I gave up
not
on the
three,
series.
but Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the
I
color
think
was nice.
right,
Color was very nice, but it had no identity of its own. It
right.
wanted to kind of capitalize on what
Original
the
presented.
Halloween sequel trilogy wanted to
Right.
do, which I really didn't care for either. But
I think the last one I saw the series was the one in 2013. Again, they
yeah,
couldn't.
I saw the last one too. I could care less. It was
Yeah.
like
After that, they came out with a few more. I didn't bother. I'm like, nope, I'm done. Not
it's like no
interested.
more. It's like no more. I say they should steer into the stupid skid. Make
Yeah.
it a parody. Because at
Right.
this
I
point,
could see that.
how old is Michael Myers at this point?
Old, like in his 60s,
70?
something like
He's
that.
70 now? Yeah. I say steer into the stupid skid. Make
Like the
Michael
gold
Myers in a
he
nursing
fights
home
the gold
killing old
fights the
ladies in a
Golden
nursing home.
Girls.
Do it. I will watch the shit out of it.
Or he fights
Him
Bubba.
kill like slowly, and they do the music, but they do it slowly. They do
He's
and
walking in
with
a
the
walker
walker and on dialysis, you know, you know.
it's like that in Living Color with Jim Carrey with the Star Trek when he makes fun of the older Captain Kirk.
Well, I say, if I say do it. You know,
Right. Or he meets
it
Jay
could
and
it
Silent
it
Bob's.
could be funny if you have a good writer and you know that that
Right.
doesn't do the like referential hipster humor. You
Right.
know, like the was it sarcastic hip? I call it sarcastic hipster humor, the Rick and Morty approach, if you will.
Right. 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 It's funny, like with all this talk of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I remember before I saw the original, I saw the 2003 remake first before not knowing that this was a remake. I thought that was its own thing. And then I remember 1 year later, after seeing the remake, my dad showed me the original. I was still like mesmerized and amazed how I was still
Yeah,
scared, horrified. How like this is not a
yeah,
gore fest,
and
but I'm
and
still like
that's the
freaked out.
thing, and that's the thing is I know younger generation usually likes new and shiny stuff, but you also have to put in retrospect for the originals.
Right.
This was probably the first of its kind.
Yeah.
You know, people at this point had never seen anything like it. The
Right.
pioneer status is really what gets the older films. You appreciate the older films more because the resources for shiny and new stuff wasn't there.
Right.
You know?
Well, at that time, no one ever saw it. Like the 70s was like so groundbreaking with horror. Like no one saw things
Absolutely.
like The Exorcist, The Omen, or Black
Yeah.
Christmas,
Yeah.
Halloween, Dawn of the
And,
Dead.
yeah. No one had ever seen anything like that before.
No, no,
And
like
and they're good films. They're good films.
oh, they
Just
are like, and
just
also
and for a lot of younger audience to say, "Oh, well, it's dated." Well, everything is
This
dated within its own time frame. Those
true,
films
true.
that those kids are gonna watch now are gonna be dated in a few years, and they're gonna go, "Wow, this really didn't age well."
Yeah. Well, I
You
guess
know?
for me, is like I grew up on like these like watching. I mean, well, like watching these as a teenager when I was getting into horror films because of how like so awesome to see how much horror like progressed and changed the last 100 years from
Right,
its
and it
history.
did,
Like
it did. But in a lot of cases, and I'm not putting down anything new. I love to see a new horror
same,
film
but it's hard these days.
that
Like it's not like how it was back in the 70s. We're so ground
that's
with the 80s too.
not, well, maybe not groundbreaking, but at least entertaining, and at least has a good story and
Right.
good atmosphere and stuff like that.
Right. Like I said, I
I
really
don't
enjoy
put down new horror films because they're new. I'm not a hipster.
this.
But I do think, um, you know, liking a film purely because it's new and exciting, of course it's going to be new and exciting
Right.
now, but
Right.
a few
Well,
years down the line, it's going to show its age,
right. True.
like
Like,
all films
like
do.
recently, I really enjoyed Ty West's X series a lot. Out of like with recent horror stuff, I still haven't seen Bodies, and I don't know. There's like so much. It's like overload. I can't like keep track of every.
Yeah, yeah. You do me a favor. Send me a text that Dario Argenta, uh,
Oh
or
yeah, right. The Scar. Well, not Dario. It's Asia Argento's
Asia
movies.
Argenta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But yeah, definitely send me over that film because I won't remember. I'm
Okay.
terrible with film names.
I got you back. And we're talking about 70s horror film. I've been watching like the Hammer films. Like the Hammer like really like revolutionized horror for its time when they rebooted Dracula,
Oh
Frankenstein,
yeah, well
the Maiden,
that
the
brought
Wolf.
it to a modern image that really never really was topped. You
Right. And also when I look at like the later ones that came out in the 70s, like Frankenstein, Monster from Hell, Horror of Frankenstein, Scars of Dracula, and Satanic Rites of Dracula, and Dracula 80 1970. I like laughed at myself. Is this movie for, or even heck, The
Yeah,
Legend of Seven
the
Golden
AD
Vampires,
1972. I remember that one. That one was pretty
Dracula,
bad.
Dracula versus Kung Fu. Like at that
Yeah,
point, it was
the
just
Dracula
really.
exploitation era. Yes.
Yes. They really tried too hard to appeal to like the modern 70s. They were also like too late to keep up with the times of with horror films. Like Dracula 8072, it feels like more of a like its own thing, like a regular like hippie type of film rather than a horror Dracula film.
Yeah, they really wanted to capitalize on the name. And to Lee's credit, he did play Dracula overseas because he spoke like several different languages besides English,
Yeah, yeah.
French, German, you know.
Right.
But that's down to just Lee being an absolute Chad. He's
Yeah,
he was definitely a man of many hats, and
yeah.
I mean, for Pete's sake, at 80 years old, he just decided to form a metal band
Right.
and
But I
just.
feel like you can tell, like when you watch like some of the later Dracula films, that he was like really annoyed and like the typecasting and
Oh
playing
yeah, and
like
there are interviews when he said that that it's getting further and further away from the character,
it is. And he said
and
that
he wasn't being posh or too good because he knew that as an actor you're bound to make bad films.
true,
Just
true.
don't be
Well, I
bad in
know some
them.
of the I
That's
found
his quotes directly. You know.
I found the Hammer Dracula is like very consistent with some of like I liked Brides of Dracula, Prince
Yeah,
of
I did.
Darkness,
That's my
Prison of
favorite
the
is Bride
Grave,
actually.
and Taste the Blood of Dracula. Not a great one, but it was okay. There was potential, but it wasn't for studio interference. It could have been its own thing.
Did
And Scars of Dracula I enjoy because wait, hold on a second.
I believe he is going to take care of his dog.
Yeah.
He'll be right. Right back after a moment. But yeah, the Hammer films definitely groundbreaking. I haven't really been topped in terms of vampire movies, but
Sorry about that.
he's back. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, I was going into just vampire films in general. Near
Right.
Dark is one of my favorite
That's a good one.
80s vampire movies. As is Lost Boys. I love Lost Boys.
That's a good one. I also like trying to think what was another good vampire film? Well, the Blade movies were good. Well, the
Blade movies
first
were
two.
good.
Third one sucked.
Yeah, let us forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend Near Dark for those who haven't seen it. The night was it 87?
I think
19
so. Yeah, something like that.
It's great, great vampire movie. And of course, Lost Boys are also great.
Yeah. Yeah. Just not
And of
Twilight.
course, Fright Night. Let
Oh, yeah,
us
that's
forget
good.
Fright Night.
Actually, that movie, if you think about it, that movie pays a lot of tribute to the Hammer a little bit, but done like
Absolutely.
modernized.
Yeah, it's more of a parody of it, but it's got
Yes.
some really cool vampire designs.
Yes, yes. I have to rewatch that. I never saw the remake to it, but
No, I didn't see the remake to it either.
yeah. And in the future, I decided, depending on like which horror series I review, like if I like in the future, I want to do a review of Jaws, but I'm like, you know what? Instead of making one review for the Jaws sequels, just make one video where it's like, here are the Jaws, my thoughts on the Jaws sequels.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Here
but
are
then
my
next,
thoughts on the sequels. I have none.
this, but then but next year is going to be an exception for doing the Halloween series, where it's like, oh, I'll review one at a time.
That'll be interesting
Yes.
because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there is,
Could
but
make a
I've
whole
seen.
separate video on the just the zombie, Rob Zombie version.
I'll do a double one, like just talk about both of them in the same video rather than one at a time. It'll be easier that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll keep a lookout for that one.
yeah, but that's not till like in the near future. Right now, I'm trying to finish my Hammer review. Well, finish and editing
You're
and.
trying to hammer in that review. It's
Yeah,
hammer.
but I won't be able to
I
do the.
apologize for that joke. A
That's
little
okay.
dad humor. A guy that isn't a dad.
I'll only be able to talk about the first Mummy Hammer film, then do the Mummy Hammer sequels in the future because they weren't those were not really the big franchise like they were with Dracula and Frankenstein because you had Christopher Lee and Cushing coming back more than once.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I have to wrap this up soon because I have to go take care of my grandfather soon. So,
All right. On that note, I am Wolfman Sam with my partner Johnny Buff Guns, and we are Creatures of
Creatures
the
of the
Night.
Night. Sayonara.
We'll see you next time.